documents that we produced out of all these nature conservation projects.
The environment can also be unintentionally preserved because, especially in no man's lands or in areas which are demilitarized and where human activity is restricted. We know this in between North and South Korea. We know, in a sense, that the Iron Curtain before Europe reunited was another example of this. And we know that the Cyprus buffer zone is also a good example of this since the study that we did, because a lot of vulnerable species can find refuge there. A lot of habitats are preserved because there is no construction work or human activity. And generally, when you have these untouched environments, the ecosystems manage to essentially rebuild themselves. In a sense, the buffer zone over the last 40 years had become a real terra incognita for scientists. Nobody really knew what was going on in there. And what they found is that they didn't necessarily find any new species, but what they did find is a lot of vulnerable species had found refuge in the buffer zone. The most obvious of those was the Cyprus mouflon. They found a population of about 200 individuals in an abandoned village called Barisha in the buffer zone.
People left in '74 in a bit of a hurry. And the village has been untouched ever since. And so there's a population of about 200 mouflons who essentially live in the village. They've taken over the village.
Yeah, we put a lot of water for them in some. The population of the mouflon living in the buffer zone and surrounding the buffer zone has increased a lot, mostly due to the buffer zone status, because of the protection that it received in the buffer zone from poaching, and for the decreased human activity in the buffer zone that, of course, created a safe haven for the species. The main threats are mostly human activities, mostly related to livestock grazing in areas where mouflon live, poaching, of course, that has never ceased to be a problem, but also increased road traffic in some mouflon areas that increased collisions.
Of patrol track. This is Barisha village. Over there are the boundaries of the buffer zone, and you can see all over this place the different positions.
A participatory process should start from today, actually, and consulting with people who own land within the buffer zone, people who don't. And as a nation, and by a nation I mean Cyprus, the whole of Cyprus, people should get together and decide how they can transform this unique environment into a symbol of peace, and how they can preserve the unintended consequences, the unintended beneficial consequences of this conflict, which is the fact that they have this unique green corridor that essentially goes on for 180 kilometers and contains a huge amount of biodiversity that is unique in the world.